All right, well, we are spot on here at 2 o'clock at least on the East Coast. Elizabeth, you're out on the West Coast. I'm on Cape Cod, you're in San Diego. That's one of the farthest flights we could have, right? But through the beautiful technology that we've all come to love. Let's start the session. We'll do 30 minutes here with Elizabeth Sage. Before we begin, we spent a little money doing a little promo for Cadre and CadreTalk, so I'm gonna show it to everybody. And let her run.
When the event industry gets knocked down, we get back up. With live events returning, maybe it's time to rebuild. With a more flexible workforce, Cadre is the smartest way to contract event industry freelancers. Compliantly work with your own freelancers or access thousands of new faces from a single user-friendly platform. And with our addition of meetingjobs.com, post your full-time openings on the industry's premier job board. It's time. Get back up with us. Visit us today.
There we are. Did it. Excellent. Yay. It's a big deal for us. So welcome everyone today to CadreTalk. Today's session is titled Securing a Seat at the Table, and I'm here with Elizabeth Sage. She's the Associate Director of Events and Trade Shows at Illumina. But before we begin with Elizabeth, the shameless plug is for Cadre. Cadre is an online marketplace that connects freelancers with freelancers in the event industry looking for people looking to hire them, right? What we try to do is simply make it easy for freelancers to find work, and for people looking to hire them, make it easy for them to find them, to contract them, and to pay them. Right? And so we ask that whether you're looking to hire somebody or you're a freelancer, you visit hirecadre.com. And recently, Cadre acquired meetingjobs.com, which is a nice complement to our business. It's a full-time job board in the events industry. Meetingjobs.com, we're starting to see a lot more postings, which is great in our industry, seeing several a week now. And we'd ask that everyone here does visit meetingjobs.com as well as hirecadre.com. So let's circle back and bring back in Elizabeth. Elizabeth, let's do a little rundown of an intro for you. You've been at Illumina for almost 2 years now. You started just before this mess.
Just before COVID, yeah. So almost a year and a half, actually, not even a full year and a half. I started 2 months before we all went home, which is a fun time to try and get your feet wet in a new job.
Yep, yeah, exactly. And then before that, you were 12 years at LPL Financial. You were the vice president of conference experiences.
Yes, so 12 years at LPL. In theory, I grew up there. Doing all of their events and eventually leading the team. Okay.
And then Pfizer before that, still in a meetings capacity. And then before that, hotels.
Yep, started my career in the trusty space of hotels.
Okay. And you were, now the awards, you were recently, in 2020, you were named one of the Smart Meetings Planner of the Year, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And then in this year, you were Smart Women in Meetings. You received one of the Innovator Awards.
I did. Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Very cool. And I think that's how Dawn met you and how we connected and everything. So cool. We're super excited to have you here. Let's jump right into it. We titled the session Securing a Seat at the Table. And so what does that mean to you as a meeting and events professional when we say that phrase?
Yeah, so it really is about kind of getting in there with the C-suite, right? And letting people understand the value of meetings and the importance of any sort of meeting event, be it live or digital, to drive the business forward. Yeah. I mean, meetings play a massive role in kind of your overarching marketing campaign, brand recognition, driving even specific keys and objectives for whatever kind of behavior you're trying to change for your audience. So I think getting a seat at a table is really just being able to educate your internal stakeholders and your executives, and earning their trust, right? And letting them know that they can rely on you to help make actual strategic business decisions, I think in a way that maybe 30 years ago in this industry, we didn't think was possible.
It's almost like the meetings component of a company hasn't been part of that strategic discussion, right? In the past, or it's growing to be part of that, but it always hasn't been. It's been this little thing on the side that you threw budget at, right? But it wasn't tied into. Do you think that's slowly changing, or do we have to keep on pushing it, or do you have certain C-suite people that are open to it? How do you think that's starting to develop?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in never stop growing. So to answer your question in a couple of ways, I do see that changing, and I don't think we should ever stop pushing for that. I think it's so important to show up as business strategists. If you're really trying to get a seat at the table, you have to have a more than surface level understanding, I think, of revenue models and how the company makes business and what they're trying to drive forward, right? And that's when we can come in as event strategists and say, look, based on what you're trying to do, this is how a live event or a digital event can help drive those objectives forward. So I do think there's just constant education in that space. And I think it's really both industry dependent and company dependent on if that's changing or not. So I've worked in companies where, and have peers that work in companies where the C-suite is completely open and saying, yes, they're invited in, you were invited into the table and we want you to be a part of this decision. And I've worked at other companies where it's not, that accepted, right? And it's not because they're against it, it's that they just don't know, they don't understand. So I think there has to be a certain level of grit on our end to just kind of fighting the good fight and educating our executives and our C-suite and letting them know the importance and the value of events in the grand scheme of their business.
But you keep on calling it a business strategist, right? I mean, you have a different language that most people don't use, right? When you're in a position like yours, you're saying business strategist, you're not saying meeting planner or, and you hear more of a business strategist term when you hear like all these webinars and stuff have been coming out in the last year, and people say, this is where we need to be going as we come out of this. We have to prove our value again, right? To our C-suite people, our company, right? Into the industry again. So what are the things that, if you're a planner, right, or a planning organization versus a business strategist, what bridges those two? What are the skills, like you're saying, that we need to learn to start pitching ourselves in the best light as a business strategist?
So I really do think it's funny because when we're to your point of we have to sort of repitch our value in a sense, right? I think especially coming out of COVID, our value will be easier to pitch in some regards because there is this sort of craving to network and be in person again in all businesses. I mean, people want to see each other, meet internally, meet with customers, right? Yep. And I think that bridge that you're talking about is it's really a skill of going from being in the weeds and in the details. And I've worked with it, I know, and I've been myself, the logisticians, right? Those that are like all about like going through the BEOs with a fine-tuned comb. And that's a hugely important skill set. And I think that base knowledge is extremely important. And then that bridge that you're crossing over is where you really are able to pull up into that kind of 10,000 foot level and understand like, okay, I know how the details work and I know what this does, but how does that then fit in? It really is a requirement to have an understanding of the business you're working in, whether that be an association or a corporation, understanding who your customers are and understanding what they want. And that's when you can, kind of look at all, like I have this image of like looking down, when you're flying in an airplane, which I'm doing this tomorrow, I'm very excited about. But you look down and you see the cities and you can get a sense of like, wow, there's a fantastic city planner behind that. I can see how neatly everything is laid out, right? So you have to have that view of the business and understanding, okay, well, this is what, this department or this vertical of the organization does. This is what this vertical of the organization does. And this is how I can come in as an event and business strategist and support the objectives of each of those departments.
So you've been there a year and a half. Are you inheriting a situation that is kind of built out like this already? Or are you having to put that together? Are you having to look down at, because you're in a big company and there's a lot of stuff going on, and I can't imagine it's always super coordinated, right? So are you having to piece all that together now?
That's what I'm trying to do, definitely. Yep. I mean, it's really challenging for me because I've never even seen a live event at my company. I didn't even get the opportunity before I went to COVID.
Wow.
So it's hard to even understand how effective our events were previously. But what I'm really trying to do is really just get people, especially our stakeholders and our business owners that are hosting at this stage still digital events. Why are you hosting it? You know, what is your purpose in hosting it? So I have an understanding, I think, of why a lot of these events are needing to take place, but I want the stakeholders to have that same understanding and speak that same language. So there is quite a bit of education right now between my team as well, as we're really just trying to help drive this understanding and asking why, so the company can sort of wrap their head around, oh, this is why we do events. Oh, this is why it's important. There's no question at this point in my current situation that we should be doing events. Yeah. I'm just trying to help us get to a point where we're doing the right events, you know, and we're really responding to our customers' needs based on the kind of events we do. I should caveat, if it wasn't clear, I only do external facing events. I'm not doing any sort of employee engagement or internal events. It's all customer facing. So there needs to be a knowledge or an understanding of who our customers are and what they want.
And they're educational, like what are the components, like when you think, so as you've gathered information, right, and you're thinking about going out there and you're seeing what's being relayed virtually, are you learning some tenets of, these are the type of things that we need to, when we do live events again, they have to have a education component, a recreational component? What are the things that are starting to gel in your mind?
I don't believe there is a catch-all blueprint for events necessarily. I don't necessarily believe that every event has to have an educational component or every event has to have a wellness component. It really comes back to, and I'm a broken record in saying this, but what are you trying to accomplish? What behavior are you trying to drive by putting on or investing any time, energy, and money into that event? And from there, you can select from your sort of a la carte list of typical components of an event, right? And be like, all right, so, you know, we know this is a brand awareness campaign, so to speak. Okay. So it's really important that people can kind of connect with us more deeply as a brand. And we want to make sure that they understand, like, this brand is here to make them feel a certain way. And so you might hire certain keynote speakers for that. And you may or may not even have to go into deeper level breakout sessions if you're doing just a full brand awareness campaign, right? Yep. Then you have, you know, the other side of like a recognition and reward trip. So it's really important that the people at that event feel just loved on, for lack of a better term, right? And so I don't know that I need to push any like meaty education, but I do want to give you pieces within this space that make you feel like you are valued as a customer of this company. And that value will in turn make them want to work harder, right? And create more, you know, however their model works, right? Create more business, generate more business that will in turn affect the company's bottom line.
So as you move from planner to strategist, that's a different set of communication skills, leadership, right? You've got a team, you mentioned, of people, so you're not just you know, a lone wolf out there trying to run this all on your own, right? So let's delve into just leadership, right? And what it takes, you know, to lead a team in this environment, what it takes to persuade, you know, people to do things either down the chain or up the chain of command. So what are some tenets of leadership that you kind of live by or have learned to kind of do your job?
Yeah. Being a leader is hard. Yes. I think we see these really good leaders and we just assume it's so easy. Or you see really bad leaders and we can sit back and be like, oh, well, I can see where you messed up. I would never do that, blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's very easy for folks to sort of, who maybe never held or are not currently in leadership roles, to have a lot of opinions on what makes a good leader or a bad leader. And at the end of the day, leadership it's not easy and it's a lot of work. I think, my greatest challenge too is I started a new company and I had to learn a brand new team virtually for the most part. And that was not easy. But compassion, empathy, and listening, I think are three really important skills for any leader. I think you have to always be compassionate to what your team is going through, right? Everybody, especially during COVID, but even before COVID and even after the pandemic, we all have our own things happening, right? And so there has to be a level of compassion as a leader in understanding, yes, these are my expectations of performance from you, but I'm going to provide some compassion if you're dealing with XYZ. And that's built on trust, right? And having that kind of open communication where you can understand what they're going through, but you don't even need, I don't think there needs to even be details shared necessarily. It's just knowing that I can be compassionate to individual situation. Empathy, like I said, is again, just sort of understanding their challenges and where they're coming from and being able to relate to where they're coming from and be able to share stories. And that is related to listening. I know several really, I've had some amazing leaders that I've been fortunate enough to report to, some really awesome mentors. And I just, when I think about some of their tenets of leadership, it's listening and asking questions and being curious and open and really coming at it from a non-judgmental perspective of what the team is going through. I mean, it really is, I'm a mom of two and it's very similar to parenting, right? In that respect of they, at the end of the day, this is going to be very maybe touchy-feely, but like people just want to feel safe and loved and understood. And maybe in a business world, we're not going to use the term love, right? But people need to feel like they're in a safe space and they just want to be heard and understood. And so I think as a leader, if you want anybody to kind of support you or maybe follow your vision or even just build that basic level of trust, you have to create a space where your team feels safe and heard and understood. And I think compassion, empathy, and listening are all extremely important factors in creating that space.
Yeah, and there's so much like you read all these books as like leadership learned, or are you born into it, or I don't know, but I think you have to have some of it innate to yourself where you can like there are times when people like try to be empathetic or compassionate. You can just tell it doesn't fit right? I mean, and the people you lead or you work with, they can see through more than you think, right? They can see through if you're not being authentic, they're going to see right through that, right? And and good leaders almost have an innate ability to understand, not understand people, but just know what each person needs, right? And listen, and like you're saying, ask the right questions. I've always found, because as a leader, you don't know all the answers, right? A lot of people come to you with questions and they're like, so what do you want me to do? And you're like, what do you think you should do, right? And because you don't have all the answers, right?
No, and that's really also a tenet of a good leader is being able to admit, I'm not the expert, you are, and saying, this is maybe my gap, and so I need you because this is your skill set to help fill in that gap, right? And so I think being a leader doesn't mean you have to know all the answers or be able to do the job, but you have to understand where your limitations lie, right? It is the whole, what is the phrase? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I mean, that's what a successful team looks like, right? And if you can be a leader kind of at the helm of that and just the understanding of like, I can't do this on myself. I need them just as much as, they might need me. There's a lot of thought. I listened to a really interesting Tony Robbins podcast yesterday, or he was interviewed on a Lewis Howes podcast and talking about servant leadership. And, that's a concept that I'm starting to kind of explore on my own of like, what would that look like for me? Because I don't know if I would have described my leadership style that way previously, but I think that's a really interesting kind of path that I'm looking to start diving into just for my own personal journey as a leader of, what does servant leadership look like, or what could that look like for me?
And as I've heard that described to me, it's more the sense of, I'm here to serve the people that are working for me, right? I'm here to cut the path for them. I'm here as a resource to them. I'm here to put the goal of what we're trying to do above any one person, right? Is that
Yep.
what you're getting at? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. How's one of the things I always have a problem with in a leadership role is sometimes delegating, right? I want to do it, and then I do it, and then I get back in, and it's a hard thing, right, to delegate. But you can't keep everything for yourself, otherwise you can't get everything done. So, what's your approach to delegating? Do you have the silver bullet to delegate, or what do you do?
Yeah, that'd be great if I could have the all the answers to how to delegate. It's something that I had to learn. So it's not something I did well when I first entered a leadership role. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Enneagram, but I am an Enneagram 8 through and through, which is an active controller, which means I like control. It's very important to me.
Good meeting planners do. They're control freaks, right?
Totally. And honestly, just having that awareness of like, oh, that's why I'm approaching this situation, like that right away is a huge step for me to be like, okay, I can let go a little bit, right? So delegating doesn't come naturally to me, but it is a skill that I've had to, honestly, from a sustainability perspective, and a mental stamina perspective, I've had to delegate. I mean, you don't have a choice, right? And if you trust the people, the delegation does come a little bit easier. I've had folks that report to me before that I know I can give them a task and they're going to do it, and I know they're going to be amazing at it, and I don't have to think twice about it. So a lot of that has to do with trust in your people, and giving people, again, I'm going to kind of relate it to parenting, but it's just like giving them an opportunity to succeed, right? Or giving them an opportunity to try. Because I think we tend to lowball people's abilities across the board. I mean, I think that's sort of a defense mechanism.
Or elevate our own abilities.
Or elevate our own, right? It's kind of a defense mechanism. So many of us walk through life of like, well, I can definitely do it better than that person can, exactly. Which is hilarious. That's usually not the case. But so it really is, it's having to put your ego aside, and if anyone else is a controller like me, putting your control freak tendencies aside and being like, you know what, it's okay that I'm going to delegate. And I think there's also this concept that I've talked about with some friends before of this kind of what was it? It was like a one-way door or a two-way door concept, which I think originated at Amazon, if I'm not mistaken, where a one-way door is you go through, a decision is made, you go through, and that door shuts and there's no going back. There's no turning back from that. Mm-hmm. Or a two-way door where like I can make a decision, I can start down that path, and if it's not working, I can kind of come back, the way I came and start all over again. So I think that's something to think about with delegation as well, of like, am I giving you a one-way door task or a two-way door task, right? And I think the more trust you have in your team, the more you can give them one-way door tasks, but just understanding there is a difference between kind of a point of no return and, hey, you can mess up. That's how we learn, is from our failures, right? I actually had a situation with a team member once that she was really upset that she felt like she totally screwed up this it was actually a webinar, and she called me almost in tears because she thought like the stakeholder was going to like come to me and complain, which never happened, of course. But I told her, I was like, well, first of all, nothing happened. I think you did fine. I think you're being hard on yourself. But I was like, do you feel better almost, right? That you like, quote, dropped the ball. And she was like, kind of, right? Because she landed and she didn't break into a million pieces, right? And she was able to move on. So I think and again, it was me just giving her a safe space to feel like she failed, even though she really didn't. But it's like, it's okay that you feel like you failed. I don't think you did, but also I don't think you're ever going to make these quote mistakes again because you've learned. So again, it goes back to what I said about as a leadership, just creating that safe space for people to kind of try things out and feel comfortable failing.
Some of the best advice I ever got about delegating was from an early mentor of mine, and he said, Todd, delegating at its core is really a hiring decision. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he says, well, if you really hire the right people, then it's easier to delegate. Yeah. Right.
Okay. And we don't always get the opportunity though to hire.
And you don't.
Inherit a team, which happened to me in several positions, right? I inherited a team. And then it goes back to sort of that just assessing, being compassionate, being empathetic, right? Still giving them a space to understand, allowing people to show you what they're capable of or not capable of, things like that.
Then he said, if someone could do the job that you wanted, the task that you wanted them to do at 80% of the way you would do it, be happy with that. He says, because you've offloaded 100% of the task and it's done 80, so you can go do something else now. But it's getting done 80% to the way you wanted it done. And if you can live with that, just keep on doing that. He said, the problem is that other 20%. If you start jumping in there and trying to get people to do it exactly like you, then you're micromanaging them.
Yeah.
Then you're really saying, here, go do this task. But then when you come back, I'm going to show you all the things you didn't do right, because 80% isn't good enough. You've got to get it to 90% or 100%, right? And then that kills delegating. So my goal has always been, all right, I've got to be able to cringe at the 20% that I didn't like to get the value of delegating all this stuff, off my plate.
And you know what, I'll respond to that as well, Todd, is there's an actual right and wrong way to do things. And there's that's just not the way I would have done it, but you still get to the same outcome. And that's important to really understand are you doing it wrong, or are you just not doing it the way I would have done it, but you're still getting to the same outcome?
Yeah. Or you did it wrong, but that's because when I handed you the task, I gave you no guidelines whatsoever. Never showed you how I would have done it the first time around, right? So what did I expect? I expected 100%, but I didn't give you the tools or the knowledge to even give me back a 50% solution.
Yep.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. It's a constant battle, especially for control people like.
Yes.
So, well, how do you think you've changed as a leader over time and as you've been studying leadership?
I think I think I'm still a definite work in progress as a leader. Like I said, I'm a firm believer. I mean, self-help is like my favorite genre. I feel like there's always room for improvement, sometimes to a fault. So I definitely am constantly evaluating what I maybe did wrong, or a situation, or what I could have done better, and just trying to, it's like every day is a reset. Like, okay, I feel like I didn't do so great today in this situation or this conversation. So how can I do it better next time? Giving myself some grace. That's been a big skill. I don't even know if that's a skill, but that's something that I've really had to come to terms with, is like, I have to give myself grace that I cannot be the perfect person for everybody all the time, but acknowledging the difference between giving myself grace of like, well, maybe I could have done it a little better, and being like, yeah, I really went down the wrong path and I should have known better. Right. So it's kind of understanding. So
it's an honest appraisal before you give yourself grace.
Yeah. And I mean, I can give you some pretty clear examples of things I did not do well in previous roles, but I'm learning from them, obviously. So those are kind of two things that I've really come to terms with in my progression as a leader.
Wow. Well, I think one of the biggest things I take away from today is, it's good to always talk about leadership, but this concept of kind of gearing up to the next level of what the meetings professional is, and what, if we really want a seat at the table, how we have to think about more than just the two-sided buffet, right?
Yeah.
We have to think about how it all fits together financially, strategically. It's more than just the logistics. Right?
It is. And it's really just asking why, right? It's just, even from like a logistical, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this event? And just getting the answer to those questions. You don't need to be, a vice president of finance and understand how all of the numbers work and what the quarterly reporting looks like. But you do have to do a little bit of research. I really believe you have to kind of push a little bit out of your comfort zone and ask
you're
questions.
Not absolved of the other business type things because you want to throw a party.
Right. And it's okay to ask questions and find somebody that you're comfortable with and say, hey, I just want to understand your business a little bit better. Tell me about your department and what you guys do. people love talking about stuff like that.
It's
So I
tough.
think it's okay to make those connections, right? And show people that you're interested.
And with that, we have just wrapped up 30 minutes of Cadre Talk.
That's a fast 30, Todd.
It's a fast 30 minutes, Elizabeth. Thanks for spending some time with us today. I think we put your LinkedIn address in the chat at one point in this, and I hope people start connecting with and following Elizabeth. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd.
It's a wrap.
Thank you.
All right, bye.